Imagine, imagine for just a second that you're locked in a room with 20 highly emotional, entirely irrational human beings.
Oh boy.
Right.
Yep.
Half of them are actively crying. 3 of them are trying to, like, systematically destroy the furniture. And absolutely none of them care about your logical arguments, your timeline, or, your carefully color-coded agenda.
Yeah, that sounds like a total nightmare.
It really is. But now, here's the real challenge. You have to establish complete order in this room, and you have to do it without raising your voice. Like, not even once.
I mean, it sounds like an impossible stress test. That's the kind of scenario they'd use to train hostage negotiators or emergency responders.
It really does. But today, we're not talking about a crisis center. We are taking you straight into the most chaotic, unpredictable, and high-stakes environment imaginable, an early childhood classroom.
Ah, of course.
Yeah, we're talking toddlers, preschoolers, tiny humans who are still actively trying to figure out how gravity works, let alone how to share a highly coveted yellow plastic truck or process their own overwhelming anger.
Which is exactly why it's the ultimate proving ground. I mean, if you can successfully lead in that room, if you can establish trust and order with a group of irrational 3-year-olds, you really can lead anywhere.
100%. So welcome to today's deep dive. We have an incredibly compelling mission for you today. We're pulling out the core philosophies from a book called The Warm Demander Approach, Early Childhood Edition.
Right, by Gerald W. Raines Jr.
Exactly. He's the creator of Culture Fix by Raines. And technically, it's a roadmap for early childhood educators to build classroom culture over a few weeks. But as we dug into this material, something really profound happened.
It did, because very quickly, it stops being a book about managing toddlers.
Yes. It reveals itself as this absolute masterclass in human psychology, boundary setting, and, well, the architecture of healthy relationships.
Which is universally applicable.
Totally. The tools we're going to extract today are things you can immediately apply to managing your corporate team, dealing with a stubborn coworker, or just navigating conflicts in your own family. Okay, let's unpack this.
I'm ready.
Let's start with how this approach fundamentally demolishes everything we think we know about the word structure.
That is a vital place to begin. Because culturally, we have this very specific and honestly often flawed relationship with the idea of structure.
We really do.
We tend to view structure and freedom as these opposing forces on a spectrum, right? We assume that if we impose too many routines or strict boundaries, we're somehow suffocating creativity or independence, especially when it comes to young children.
Right, like we're turning them to robots.
Yeah.
But the author completely tears that assumption down.
Yeah.
He writes, structure is not the enemy of freedom, it's the foundation of it.
Yes.
I mean, think about a young child walking into a chaotic new room.
Right.
They aren't looking for a brilliant lesson plan or some open-ended creative journey. They are looking for safety.
Absolutely. Their little brains are just scanning the environment on high alert.
Exactly. They're asking 3 primal questions. What happens next? Who is in charge here? And is this person actually safe?
And if they can't answer those questions quickly, their nervous system stays in this state of low-grade panic. What's fascinating here is how closely this aligns with external, highly rigorous evaluation metrics. The text brings up the Texas School Ready program, specifically their Category 2 assessors.
Oh, let's pause on that.
Yeah.
For anyone outside the education world, what exactly are these assessors looking for? Because my assumption would be, they're checking if the kids are learning the alphabet or if the room has the newest, fanciest educational toys.
Right, that's a super common misconception. The Texas School Ready program is essentially the gold standard for evaluating if a preschool environment is actually effective. And these specific Category 2 assessors, they aren't looking at the toys at all.
Wait, really? Not at all?
No, they are looking for predictable, nurturing environments. They recognize that clear, unwavering routines form the absolute baseline of what they call warm and responsive caregiving.
Okay, wow.
Because without that predictable baseline, higher-level learning simply cannot happen. The brain is just too busy worrying about safety.
That makes so much sense. And I love how visceral the book makes this. These routines, exactly how you do the morning drop-off, how you transition from playing to eating, how you clean up the blocks, they aren't just rules printed on a laminated poster.
No, they're lived experiences.
Exactly. For a toddler, those routines are the physical rhythms they feel in their bodies. It made me think of an analogy. It's kind of like bowling with the bumper lanes up.
Oh, that's a perfect visual.
Right, like the bumpers don't stop you from having fun.
Right?
They don't micromanage how you hold the ball or force you to bowl a certain way. They just prevent the ball from ending up in the gutter every single time.
So you can actually relax.
Yes, you let go of the anxiety of failing,
Yeah.
and you just enjoy the game. The structure is what actually allows for the joy.
But here is where we have to push that analogy further. Unlike bowling, the ultimate goal isn't just to keep the ball out of the gutter for one game. The goal is to eventually empower them to play without the bumpers at all. And the book takes this directly into the physical space. The author states that your room should literally whisper the routine like a gentle river.
A gentle river. The river metaphor is just brilliant.
It forces this really practical realization. If a river has clear, defined banks, the water flows smoothly. But if there are no banks, it just spreads out into a chaotic, muddy swamp.
Which is exactly what a bad classroom looks like.
Exactly. The text argues that physical spaces need incredibly clear boundaries, like labeled bins with actual pictures on them or taped lines on the floor. It forces us to ask this huge question.
What's that?
How much of what we instantly label as bad behavior or defiance in any environment is actually just bad interior design? Or a total lack of clear pathways?
Wow. Let's translate that to the adult world for a second, because how much bad behavior in an office like people missing deadlines, miscommunication, dropping the ball is actually just bad workflow design?
All of it.
Mostly all of it.
Are the bins labeled so your team actually knows where the project goes next? Exactly. If the pathways aren't clear, people just swim in circles. And for toddlers, it's not just the physical pathways, it's the sequence of events. The text insists that routines need to run like a recognizable song.
Right, like a melody.
Yeah, they need a distinct beginning, a middle, and an end. And you achieve that through relentless repetition, visual modeling, narration, and celebration.
The narration part really stuck with me. Instead of just barking, go wash your hands from across the room, the author suggests breaking it down into a physical rhythm.
Step by step.
Yeah. You say soap, scrub, rinse, dry. You make it a melody. You physically model it with them. And through that extreme, almost exaggerated clarity, the child eventually finds true independence.
Because you've essentially programmed the sequence into their muscle memory. But, and this is crucial, this reveals a massive vulnerability in the whole system.
How so?
Well, you can have the most perfectly labeled room in the world and the most elegantly designed routines, but if the adult standing in the center of that room is sending the wrong signals, the whole thing just collapses.
Which brings us perfectly into the next major insight. How does the caregiver actually communicate within that structured space?
Right.
This is where the book hyper-focuses on the adult's physical presence and vocal tone. And frankly, this is where I started taking furious notes for my own life. Because to get a high score from those Texas school-ready assessors, caregivers are expected to maintain a positive tone with 0 negative verbal behaviors. Literally 0.
That is a remarkably high, almost intimidating bar.
Right. I was reading this thinking, are you kidding me? It means crouching down to get exactly at eye level. It means sitting on the floor. It means using a warm, impossibly low voice.
Which is so hard when you're stressed.
And crucially, it means never talking over the noise of the room. You have to actually wait in silence until they quiet down before you speak. But I have to push back here, because my immediate reaction was deep skepticism.
I think a lot of people feel that way.
Wait, seriously? Like, if 3 toddlers are having an absolute nuclear meltdown over a toy, you're telling me that using a calm, quiet voice and saying less is going to magically stop them? My instinct is to talk louder so they can actually hear me over the screaming.
And that instinct is exactly why we fail in those moments.
Really?
Your instinct to talk louder, to over-explain, to dominate the noise, that is your own stress response talking. It's not a teaching strategy. And the science of the developing brain completely supports the author here.
Tell me more about that.
Think about a 3-year-old's brain. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex logic, multi-step planning, and executive function, is basically under construction. It's not fully online.
So when they are stressed or angry, that logical part of the brain just shuts down entirely.
Exactly. The text addresses this by distinguishing between overload and defiance.
Right.
We look at a child who isn't following a simple direction, and we immediately think, oh, they're testing me. They're being stubborn.
Right, they're doing it on purpose.
Yeah. But young brains can literally only hold 1 or 2 steps in their working memory at a time. If you give a long-winded, logical explanation while they are emotionally elevated, you overload their cognitive capacity within 3 seconds.
Wow.
3 seconds.
After that, your voice is just threatening static to them.
So all that preamble we do as adults, like, Hey guys, remember when we sat on the rug and talked about being good listeners? And remember how we need to pick up the wooden blocks so nobody trips and hurts their head?
Mm.
You're saying that to a toddler? That entire speech sounds like the teacher from Charlie Brown. Just wah, wah, wah.
It is literal white noise to them. They can't extract the actionable command from all that preamble. That's why the formula the book provides is brutally simple, and it has to happen in under 5 seconds.
5 seconds. Okay, what is it?
Step 1, name the exact behavior you want. Put the blocks in the bin. Step 2, show what it looks like physically. You pick up a block, you drop it in the bin, and you smile. That is it. Stop talking.
Stop talking. If we connect this to the bigger picture, adults do the exact same thing to each other. Think about it.
Oh, absolutely.
When we are stressed out, when we're trying to manage a highly uncomfortable conversation with a spouse or a colleague, we chronically over-explain.
We really do.
We give, like, 5 minutes of preamble to soften the blow or to justify why we're asking for something before we finally get to the point. But the book insists, and this is a direct quote I wrote down, clarity is kindness. Simplicity is power.
That is a profound statement for any relationship. Over-explaining is almost always about soothing our own anxiety, not helping the other person.
Like, we want them to know we aren't the bad guy.
Exactly. But by keeping your request to 5 seconds, you are actually respecting the cognitive load of the person in front of you. You are giving them a clear path to succeed.
But let's play out the reality here. What happens when you do the calm 5-second direction and they still don't do it? Because that's going to happen.
Oh, it absolutely will.
The text talks about how to lock these routines in by practicing without moving on. I absolutely loved the reset script provided for this. You don't get mad. You don't sigh dramatically.
Which is tempting.
Very tempting. You just look at them and say, this matters, so we're going to do it one more time. I'm not giving up. I'm helping you get even better.
Notice how that script instantly changes the power dynamic. It frames the repetition not as a punishment for failing, but as an active investment in their success.
It's so positive.
It is. It's a reminder that excellence isn't an event that just magically happens. It is a habit that has to be practiced daily. And the child learns, on a subconscious level, that the adult cares enough to sit there and practice with them, rather than just doing it for them out of frustration.
Okay, so let's take stock. We have the physical environment whispering the routines. We have the caregiver utilizing the Jedi mind trick of the 5-second calm voice direction.
Yeah.
But let's be real here. Culture slips. It happens in the best classrooms, the best marriages, the best companies. Someone gets tired, someone gets hungry, someone gets triggered, and suddenly the blocks are flying across the room.
Chaos inevitably returns.
Right. So how do you handle the inevitable collapse without losing all the ground you just built?
That reality brings us directly to the core philosophy of the entire source material, the warm demander.
Yes. The title of the book, let's clearly define this because it's so powerful. The warm demander is built on a specific equation, right? Connection plus expectation equals trust.
It sounds like an oxymoron at first glance, doesn't it? Warmth, which implies softness, and demandingness, which implies rigidity.
Yeah, they seem like opposites.
But the book explains that it is the precise combination of both that creates psychological safety. It's about holding the absolute line while wrapping the correction in deep care.
Right. It's not just yelling stop hitting and sending a kid to timeout. It is holding the non-negotiable expectation. We use gentle hands every single time.
Every time.
But delivering that boundary by saying, we touch our friends softly. Let me show you how. Or, as the author brilliantly distills it, the unspoken message behind every correction must be, I care too much about you to let that be okay.
I care too much about you to let that be okay. There is so much dignity in that approach.
There really is.
It effectively separates the child's inherent worth from the child's temporary behavior. It communicates you are completely safe with me and you are unconditionally loved here, but this specific action you are taking right now must change.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How does the warm demander handle it when it's not just one kid, but the entire room has completely lost focus, like it's just total chaos?
The group meltdown.
Yes. The book introduces this concept called the gentle reset. And a reset is fundamentally different from a reaction. It's not a punishment. It's not the teacher snapping and yelling quiet out of frustration. Instead, the caregiver might start singing a transition song, or sit down and take deep, dramatic breaths with the kids, or just pause the whole room and say, hey, we're not starting the day over. We're just taking it back right from here.
This raises an important question for all of us, honestly, no matter our age or profession. Why do we as adults almost universally view having to repeat ourselves or having to pause and reset a situation as a personal failure?
Oh, that's so true. We get so intensely resentful.
We do. We say things like, I shouldn't have to tell you this again, or we already went over this. But the text explicitly states resets aren't weakness, they're leadership in motion.
Leadership in motion. I want to put that on a sticky note on my monitor.
It's brilliant. And returning to those Texas school-ready assessors, they look incredibly closely at this exact dynamic. They score a metric called positive guidance.
What does that measure exactly?
It measures how effectively a caregiver helps children return to emotional regulation after they've lost it. A true reset restores the emotional tone of the room. It doesn't just put a harsh, terrifying stop to a bad behavior. It actively teaches emotional regulation in real time.
Because think about the alternative. If you just scream quiet at the top of your lungs, sure, you might startle them into silence. You might stop the noise.
Temporarily.
Exactly. But you have completely detonated the emotional safety of the room. You have reacted to the chaos by adding your own chaos. You haven't reset anything.
Exactly. You have enforced short-term compliance through fear rather than reinforcing the long-term culture through shared expectation. And fear is a terrible, unsustainable motivator.
It really is.
Yeah.
Which bridges us perfectly into the final phase of this deep dive. We've talked about setting the structure, communicating clearly, and fixing the slips with gentle resets.
Yeah.
But how do you graduate from that? How do you create a classroom or a corporate team or a family where the people inside it actually want to maintain the culture themselves, where they don't need you to police them because they have taken ownership of it?
This requires a massive shift. You have to move beyond just managing behavior to actually cultivating a shared group identity. And to start this phase, the author issues a mandate that I think will deeply surprise and maybe even offend a lot of people.
Oh.
You have to permanently abandon the phrase, good job.
Yes. This section is all about catching them being wonderful. But I have to admit, banning good job feels so extreme to me.
It shocks a lot of people.
It is such a deeply ingrained reflex for adults. Isn't praising them, even generically, better than nothing? Why ban it completely?
Because generic praise is empty calories for the brain. It feels nice for a second, but it doesn't teach anything. The book points out that when you say good job, the child doesn't actually know what they did right.
That makes sense.
Instead, the warm demander utilizes something called descriptive praise. Instead of good job, you say, I see Jaden using gentle hands with the baby doll. You name the precise, specific behavior and you do it with warmth.
It's the difference between a boss saying, hey, good job today, as they walk past your desk, versus a boss stopping and saying, the way you structured that data in the afternoon meeting completely clarified our strategy. Thank you.
Automatically.
One is instantly forgotten, and the other actually changes how you work the next day.
Because the psychological mechanism behind this is undeniable. It triggers a specific dopamine loop tied to an actionable behavior. The author writes, what you notice is what you nurture.
What you notice is what you nurture. I love that.
Human beings of all ages will subconsciously repeat the behaviors that capture attention. If you only ever give your intense energy and attention to negative behavior, even if it's to correct it, you are inadvertently nurturing more of that negative behavior.
Wow.
By specifically and descriptively narrating the good, you amplify it.
It totally transforms the atmosphere. And it feeds directly into this brilliant strategy the book calls our room, our way.
This is such a powerful tool.
It really is. This is where you actually invite the kids to co-create the culture with you. You don't just stand at the front of the room and hand down a laminated list of rules. You sit down in a circle and you ask them, how do we want our room to feel? What do kind friends do? And you physically write their exact words down on a chart.
And people might doubt that ages 3 to 6 can do this, but they absolutely can. They know exactly how they want to be treated.
It's incredible. It made me immediately think of the tech world, like the difference between open source software and closed proprietary systems.
That's a great comparison.
Right. If you just hand down a rigid proprietary list of rules from the top, the users, or in this case the kids or your employees, will immediately look for loopholes. They will test the fences because the rules belong to you, not them.
Yeah.
But if you open it up, if you say, let's build this together, they become the developers of their own culture. As the book powerfully states, people protect what they help create.
People protect what they help create. That is a foundational bedrock principle of organizational psychology, and seeing it applied beautifully to a preschool rug is just staggering.
It really is.
Because once that is established, when a child says, "We want our room to feel happy," and then an hour later someone is throwing blocks, the caregiver doesn't have to yell. They can simply say, "Hey, remember what we said about how we want our room to feel? Let's do that right now." It calls them back to their own stated values.
But to truly understand those values and to understand why a child sometimes just can't meet them, you have to be willing to look deeper.
Absolutely.
The final piece of this approach is entirely about deepening relationships. There is a phrase here that hits so hard. Behavior is communication.
This is the ultimate paradigm shift, moving from a manager who controls to a leader who understands. Every single child has a complex backstory. The text reminds us that the child who is aggressively hitting might simply be suffering from sensory overload because the lights are humming too loudly.
Oh, wow.
Or the child who is clinging to your leg might not feel physically safe at home. The warm demander's mandate is to stay relentlessly curious, not reactive.
And the action step the author gives for this is so simple, but I imagine it's incredibly powerful. You sit next to a challenging child during free play, and you just join their world for 2 unbroken minutes.
Just 2 minutes?
You don't correct their posture, you don't try to teach them the colors of the blocks, you just ask, "What are you building?" And you actually listen.
It is about establishing an unshakable baseline of trust. The script the book provides for this phase is so revealing. I'm not just here to tell you what to do, I'm here to know you.
I'm here to know you. Just imagine, really imagine, if every boss, every romantic partner, every manager approached the people they lead with that exact mindset.
The outcomes would be radically different. Because when human beings feel genuinely seen and known, their neurological capacity for regulation, for learning, and for deep cooperation expands exponentially. The defenses drop.
It's really breathtaking when you zoom out and look at the entire picture Gerald W. Rains Jr. has painted for us today. Being a warm demander isn't about being an authoritarian disciplinarian, and it certainly isn't about being a passive pushover.
Not at all.
It is about understanding that providing structure is an act of love. It's realizing that absolute clarity is a form of care. And above all, it's the belief that your calm, steady, regulated presence matters so much more than achieving some fragile illusion of perfection.
Beautifully said.
So what does this all mean for you? It means that whether you are currently managing a room of 20 crying toddlers, whether you're trying to lead a highly fragmented remote corporate team, or you're just trying to navigate a rough patch in your own personal relationships, the blueprint is exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
You start where you are. You create safe boundaries. You move with clear purpose. You say less and show more. And when things inevitably fall apart, you don't react with chaos. You pause, and you reset with warmth.
It really forces a profound, almost uncomfortable reflection on how we operate in the adult world every single day.
It really does.
The text makes it undeniably clear that young children need absolute clarity, visual modeling, and non-judgmental resets in order to feel safe enough to thrive. We accept this as a fundamental developmental truth for a 4-year-old.
Sure.
But if these are the biological foundational building blocks of human trust and emotional regulation, how many of our bitterest conflicts as adults are simply the result of us forgetting to use these basic rules with each other?
Wow.
We expect our partners to read our minds instead of giving them 5 seconds of clarity. We yell over the noise of a conflict instead of waiting for calm. We constantly forget to catch each other being wonderful. And most tragically, we expect the adults in our lives to function perfectly without the very bumpers that make the game of life